Welcome to the Australia Today. I am your host, Dr. Amit Sarwal. For this very special episode in our Women's Wednesday section, we have an Indian heroine who's making her Australian debut at the Adelaide Fringe. And joining us from Kolkata, India, is a visual storyteller, Priyanka Jain. Priyanka, welcome to the Australia Today.
Thank you so much, Amit.
Now, this is your debut at the Adelaide Fringe, which is a very popular Australian, arts and cultural extravaganza. How are you feeling?
Extremely excited. First of all, I have had very little time in Australia because of the COVID pandemic. So I have actually very little clue of how big the Adelaide Fringe is going to be. I am aware of the number of events that are happening, and there are so many people from outside international producers who come for the Adelaide Fringe to scout for talents. So I'm just waiting to land in Adelaide on the 10th of March, and my show is on the 17th and 18th of March. So yeah, I'm waiting to be surprised.
Now, for those who don't know, you mentioned that you spent very little time in Australia because you are a PhD candidate at Melbourne's RMIT University, and you are, I think, pursuing something at the crossroads of traditional storytelling and theory. So you're mixing everything. Uh, for the uninitiated, how would you explain your art form?
So India had a tradition of storytelling which involved pictures. So generally, storytelling is understood as an oral activity, but in India, there were many storytelling traditions that also used pictures. So, for example, you could have a scroll and you would unroll the scroll and you would show pictures. You would point out to the various characters, say Rama or Lakshman from the Ramayan, and he would tell the stories. Or there would be boxes called kavar, which are still used in Rajasthan, and those boxes would kind of open up, and they would also be painted on both sides with images from the mythological stories, and the storytellers would point at these pictures. In South India, you have kalamkari, where they paint huge backdrops, cloth. Textiles are painted and they are hung in the courtyards of temples, and then people can see through, read through. So you have many such traditions where images are also involved in the storytelling. So this form is called picture recitation. So a story is narrated, or it is sung, it is recited, and images are also shown along with it. So this is quite unique to India. From India, it is said to have spread through Buddhism to China, Japan, Java, Indonesia, and there were similar forms of storytelling that is found in Iran. It is called parda dari. There would be a person standing on the roadside with a parda, with a tapestry which is woven with figures and images, and he would sit and tell the story. And similarly, there were traditions of such kind called cantastoria in Italy and Benkelzang in Germany and Austria. So there would be people just moving with these scrolls of paper and images and singing in marketplaces. Sometimes it was stories of mythology. Sometimes it was actual news, like a volcano erupted or some building caught fire and stuff like that. So it was a way of sharing news as well.
Yeah. Now,
And
based on
slowly this
this,
form has become
yeah,
extinct.
so based on this picture recitation form, you have developed your own show, which is titled "Why Runs The Abhisarika," and it's kind of a practice-led research into contemporizing picture recitation traditions, as we know. So, why runs the Abhisarika? That's the question. Why
So,
is
so the
Abhisarika running?
Abhisarika runs. So the Abhisarika runs because she has to get somewhere. She wants to do something. So just to clear up, the Abhisarika is a kind of a heroine. So in Indian classical Indian Sanskrit literature, there were 7 to 8 types of heroines. So there were 8 types of heroines. It's called Ashta Naika. Naika is heroine in Hindi, and Ashta is 8. So these were the kind of like temperaments or moods that a woman in love goes through. And the Abhisarika is someone who is not passively waiting for her lover to come to her. She is not going to wait and then get disappointed and then get mad or angry and all of that. She just runs to meet her lover. She does not wait for the conventions. She does not follow the conventions of the society that she should stay at home indoors and wait for her lover to come to her. She is impulsive and she moves out to meet her lover. So, why runs the Abhisarika is um, looking at the iconography of the Abhisarika as we see in many Indian miniature paintings. So we see a woman running through a dark forest. So this is the picture of the
mm,
Abhisarika found in Indian poetry, in Indian
mm,
miniature paintings, and also in Indian dance and drama.
mm.
And I try to analyze her mental landscape, what is going on through her body and through her mind while she runs.
So you mentioned that there are 7 to 8 kinds of types of abhisarika, not types of abhisarika in the Sanskrit literature, and obviously the terminology and the characterization is based on Natya Shastra,
Yeah.
the kind of iconography that has been used. So how much freedom as an artist you have taken in changing the narrative? Like obviously it's your story that you are creating, but I understand that there is some modern twist like Netflix suspense thrillers nowadays where you can choose side A and B, which so how involved, so there's second part of this is how involved are audiences in your theater?
So this is a completely audience interactive story. It's actually not even a linear story. Um, so we just have this one static image that the Abhisarika is running to meet her lover, and she is
Mm,
running through a dark forest. Lightning is cracking above her head. It's raining. It's a dark forest. She's running through trees. So the audience gets to see a number of visuals, and each visual is actually trying to think about why she's running. So this question, why runs the Abhisarika, is a question for all the motifs which are part of my set design.
mm,
And each motif, each element that you see in the visuals has its own interpretation, has its own answer as to why she's running. So it's a kind of a multi-perspective, multiverse, uh, and the audience can actually choose to listen to one motif's song or the other. So each
mm,
motif tells its own answer or its own version of the truth
mm,
in a song. I sing that song, and
mm.
the audience can choose. Okay, I want to know what the trees are thinking, or I want to know what the lightning above her head is thinking, etc., etc. So it's a completely interactive model where the audience gets to choose the sequence and the structure of the performance.
Now, it is a 55-minute audience interactive narrative journey. How hard it is for you as an artist, because it's not like a stand-up comedy show. It's very interactive. You have to be very alert, and you have to pay attention to the audience choices as well. And I assume that the audiences are divided. When you ask something, they would 50% would say A and the 50% would say B. Some are silent. So how important is the audience interaction, and how you manipulate that interaction? That's the question.
So yeah, the audience, I mean, I've had 2 or 3 kind of test audiences, and they hesitate to, make the first choice, the first
Hmm.
person to kind of speak up and say, okay, I want to listen to this song.
Hmm.
But once they get the hang of it, then they become more responsive and they are like, yes, I
Hmm.
want to listen to this or I want to listen to that. There are some places where I actually take an audience poll and say, okay, who whatever the majority says, we'll listen to that song.
Hmm.
uh, in Indian storytelling also, there is a lot of audience participation.
Hmm.
The audience joins in the chorus, or for example, they demand, like, I want to listen
Hmm.
to the story of the marriage first and not the song of the battle first, or stuff like that.
Hmm.
um, So I have taken elements. So, answering your previous question, how much freedom have, how flexible have you been with the
mm,
Natya Shastra and with the Indian traditions? So
mm,
I have taken elements from Natya Shastra. For example, there is the mention of rasa theory, that you have to
mm,
enjoy the performance, you have to savor the aesthetic pleasures of the
mm,
performance. And this is entirely seeped in Shringara Ras, which is the
mm,
erotic affect. It is a story about a girl who is going to meet her lover. So there is this the affect of passion and love and romance, which is reflected in the entire narration. And there are some elements which I have taken from the local folk recitation practices, that this kind of an audience interactive thing that the
mm,
audience can pick up and say. Sometimes I ask the, a particular member, I choose a particular member in the audience and say, sir or ma'am, what do you think, and stuff like that. So it's that mix. And the language also is relatively simple. It is in English, but the
mm,
language is very simple, so that the science part of it, like there's a lot of neuroscience involved in it, but don't get scared. It's explained in a very, very simple manner, and it kind of brings the entire recitation to another level, where you are seeing an image of a girl, but you are understanding her mental or her brain anatomy.
mm.
So it's like we are playing on many layers and levels in this recitation.
So, I assume that you have prepared the poetry in advance, or is it on spot at a
No, it is
particular
in
time?
advance. It is being
It
composed.
is in advance.
Yeah.
Everything has been prepared as a set.
Yes.
So everything is involved. Do you have pre-selected audiences as well? Like,
No.
ask me this. It's a totally
No.
no. It's
I don't know
totally
anybody in Australia.
okay. And what motivated you to choose this particular art form as opposed to say doing simple theater with a troupe?
So I have always been interested in storytelling, and I have kind of
Mm,
always wondered, uh, like, why mainstream artists? Mainstream artists, I mean, people who go to art colleges and
mm,
study a degree in arts.
mm,
We can study painting, we can study sculpture, ceramics,
mm,
textile, etc. But
mm,
storytelling, which is said to have originated in India, is not
mm,
taught in art colleges as such. So you have drama, theater, but storytelling,
mm,
as an itinerant bard, as
mm,
somebody who, as people who actually practice these traditional storytelling
mm,
forms, they go from village to village. They have these very
mm,
simple props, and they do this kind of storytelling. But it
mm,
is not taught in our art colleges, and I've always wondered,
mm,
like, why is it so? And the problem that happens is when you do not have new people taking up a practice, the
mm,
practice dies, because
mm,
the people who are currently practicing these storytelling forms, for example, the
mm,
Patachitrakars from West
mm,
Bengal, there are the Bhat Brahmins in
mm,
Rajasthan who take these covered boxes from village to village. They are very small communities. They are economically disadvantaged. They do other jobs and other professions as well.
mm,
And many of them are forced to give up their artistic practice, which is passed down through the generations. And so these art forms then somehow die out. And one way of opening up this art practice, without
mm,
appropriating unethically from the traditional
mm,
practitioners,
mm,
is to think of how you can take this art form. There is a general knowledge that we have about the art
mm,
form, that okay, it involves music, it involves singing, it
mm,
involves dancing, or it can involve these various things, and it involves
mm,
images. Now, how do
mm,
you take it up on your own? And what kind of
mm,
what can you cook up with these four simple things
mm,
on
mm,
your own?
mm,
um, so that is the whole point, that to
mm,
open up this art practice, to make people aware of this art practice,
mm.
and as I said, without unethically appropriating from the traditional practitioners.
Now, one of the key issues that you have raised is the kind of education being, or kind of research and education being given at the Indian art schools. And now I've been to not the art school, but School of Arts and Aesthetics at JNU. So I studied at JNU, and the whole theoretical base at institutions like JNU, NSD, and others is based on the leftist Marxist theory. The so do you think somewhere that's responsible for not looking after? They're worried about the plight of the poor man, but they're not worried about the plight of the poor man who's performing these traditions and how he will survive. So they're ready to basically bet their ideology on his, patronize him, the person, but not the art that he represents, just because that happens to be ancient Indian art rooted in some tradition, folk tale, folk elements.
I would not know about JNU, but as far as I know about the art colleges, most of the
Mm,
art colleges in India were set up at the time of British colonization or just before independence. So it is, so the curriculum still is somewhere influenced by the British standards. And at that time, the Britishers had set up these colleges to actually train craftsmen and draftsmen to, kind of make maps, make images of cities and
mm,
stuff like that, as local souvenirs for the British tourists and stuff. And
mm,
somehow we have still kept on with this. And what I have found out through my research is that the way Western scholars have written about these arts,
mm,
they have first of all termed it as folk art because
mm,
these storytelling practices were in
mm,
villages by, pastoral communities.
mm,
So it was kind of, relegated as a low art form and not high
mm,
art. So you don't have many galleries and art institutions which are financially well funded promoting these arts. You have
mm,
a few storytellers who are invited outside India, for example, to the ethnographic museums in Washington or in London
mm,
and stuff, and they do these storytelling in their regional languages in Bengali
mm,
or in Rajasthani. But I'm kind of like, I wonder how much of it actually gets translated to
mm,
the local audiences who are more comfortable in English. And so I think this form suffered majorly due to colonization. So
mm,
one was that Western scholars wrote about this as a folk art.
mm,
Secondly, it was that when Europeans would take the objects of the storytelling performances,
mm,
they would take the scroll, they would take the covered box and put it in the museum, but they could not take the performers with them. So
mm,
the performance and the object got separated. So you
mm.
could go and see a covered box in a museum but not make any sense of it.
Yeah.
um, so, and a lot of oral cultures also suffered during colonization. Most of the oral cultures in India, in Africa, belong to women. A lot of the songs are
Mm,
composed by women, but there would be male archivers who would take this and, without giving due
mm,
credit to the women, they would put it in text, change the
mm,
text at times. Um, so that's another reason. And
mm,
so one of the major reasons I looked at this practice was in a way to decolonize the
mm,
practice. I think it's a contemporary political zeitgeist that we are living in, where we realize that a lot
mm,
of knowledge um,
mm,
is very Eurocentric, and you need to
mm,
break away from that. You need to have this kind of a pluriverse, you need to have multivocality, you need
mm,
to bring back voices to the original people. You have indigenous communities which are now being consulted about
mm,
farming practices, about land management, fire management, and stuff like that.
mm,
And in the same spirit, I think that this practice of Indian picture recitation also needs to be looked at from a decolonized perspective.
mm. Now, you are doing PhD, or you're a PhD candidate at RMIT University, and most probably you are coming back soon after the Adelaide Fringe to start working, writing your thesis, and researching, and curating and performing it. But and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is going to India. Before him, a lot of ministers and even artists have been to India. Recently, at Kolkata Museum, there was a exhibition of indigenous Australian women's textile
Yes.
work. Do you think that at some point you would be bold enough to pick up Aboriginal or indigenous stories and perform it using the Indian props? Because somewhere the Dreamtime and the Sanskrit traditions interlap.
Yeah, so again, I would first of all need to find out what's the ethics of using their
Mm,
knowledge.
mm,
But there's a very interesting concept in the Aboriginal community, and that is
mm.
called song lines.
Yes.
So, from what I have understood about song lines, is say, for example, they were going from
Mm,
Melbourne to Adelaide. They
mm,
would make a song about the journey, and it would be
mm,
sung in the same pace at which they would be walking. So, if the walking took 10 days, the song will also last for 10 days,
mm,
and they will have descriptions of the certain landmarks they will be crossing, or the times of the day that they should be crossing in, or the seasons, or whom they have met, or whom they are supposed to meet. So it is like a kind of a Google Maps direction in
mm,
in the indigenous language. And I'd be very very interested to take this form up to kind of make walking tours, say for example
mm,
Flinders Street, Melbourne,
mm.
to Swanston Street or something like that. And so this is something that I'm very much interested in, but I need to find out how comfortable they will be in letting me use this idea. Yeah.
Uh, Priyanka, you're going to make your debut from the team at the Australia today. I'd like to give you best wishes in your future endeavors, and hopefully we will catch up sometime in Melbourne. And thank you very much. Best wishes with your show.
Thank you so much. I just want to add that on the 25th of March from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., I am also performing at Testing Grounds at the Queen Victoria Market in Melbourne. There are tickets available. So if you can just Google up Why Runs the Abhisarika Melbourne or something like that, I'm sure it'll come up. Um, or else I can send you the link to the ticketing app and you can put it down in your show so people in Melbourne can also catch up.
Thank you.
Thank you.